The corridors of Station Ardent were silent. Only the hum of energy cores and the occasional hiss of steam broke the stillness. Most people avoided these halls, preferring the bright, noisy sectors where the city's life pulsed endlessly. But for one man, the quiet was home. Garrick, the janitor, moved with careful steps. His uniform was simple and worn, nothing fancy, no insignia to mark him as important. He carried a bucket in one hand and a mop in the other, gliding along the polished floors like a shadow no one noticed. For him, this work had been his life for years, cleaning up after the high officers and technicians, sweeping away what others discarded without a thought. He liked the silence. In the emptiness of the corridors, he could think. He could hear the soft sound of his own breathing, the drip of water from a faulty pipe, and sometimes faint, strange noises he could not explain. Tonight, those noises were louder. A soft scratching, almost desperate, echoed from a maintenance hatch at the far end of the hall. Garrick paused, tilting his head. Most people would ignore it, but curiosity had always been a part of him. Slowly, he moved closer, the mop dragging lightly against the floor. The scratching grew louder, sharper, more urgent. Garrick knelt and peered into the hatch. His eyes widened. A tiny dragon hatchling crouched in the shadows. Its scales were dull and dirty, its wings too small to fly, and its eyes were large, pleading, and frightened. It was shaking, its small claws digging into the metal floor as if it feared the world itself. Garrick's heart tightened. He had seen many strange things in his years on Station Ardent, but nothing like this. Not even the reports of alien visitors had prepared him for a creature like this, a being that looked dangerous yet innocent at the same time. The hatchling chirped, a soft, pitiful sound that made Garrick flinch. It was hungry. He glanced around. The corridors were empty. No one was coming. No one would know if he helped it. Yet a warning echoed in his mind. Dragons were not harmless. They were powerful, sometimes deadly. But hunger made even the wildest creatures weak, desperate. Garrick took a deep breath. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ration bar he carried for himself. He placed it gently on the floor near the hatchling. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the hatchling sniffed the food, lowered its head, and nibbled carefully. Its eyes never left Garrick. Slowly, it ate, tiny jaws trembling with effort. Garrick watched, frozen. There was something about the way it ate that tugged at his heart, something almost human in its desperation. "Easy, little one," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The hatchling stopped and tilted its head, as if understanding. Garrick chuckled softly. "Guess you're smarter than some of the officers around here." Minutes passed. The small dragon finished the ration. It tried to stretch its wings, but they were weak, trembling with each movement. Garrick realized it needed more than just food. Shelter, safety, maybe even a friend. He had no choice. He couldn't leave it here to starve or be found by someone who would harm it. Slowly, he lifted the hatchling and cradled it in his arms. Its warmth surprised him. The creature was tiny, but it radiated a strange energy, like a heartbeat that was too big for its small body. As he walked through the corridors toward his small quarters, Garrick felt a chill run down his spine. Something about the hatchling felt ancient, like it carried a presence far older than any human or machine on the station. He shook the thought away. Perhaps it was just his imagination. But then, in the silence, a low vibration thrummed through the walls. Not the hum of the energy cores, but something deeper, something alive. Garrick stopped. The hatchling hissed softly, ears flicking back, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. What is it?" Garrick whispered. The hatchling nudged against his chest as if saying, "It's okay. Don't worry." Still, the vibration grew. Garrick's pulse quickened. He had heard rumors of dragons before, powerful creatures that could destroy whole cities. But dragons? Here, on Station Ardent, he had always thought them myths, stories told to scare children. And yet, the presence was real. He could feel it. Somewhere far above or beyond the station, something was aware of this hatchling, aware of him. He tightened his grip. "We'll be safe," he muttered. more to himself than to the creature. "We have to be." Reaching his small quarters, Garrick set the hatchling down carefully. It immediately curled up in a corner, trying to make itself small. Garrick scanned the room. Bare walls, a single bed, a small kitchenette. Nothing that could hide a creature like this long-term, but it was all he had. He rummaged through his limited supplies, finding more rations, water, and even a small blanket. The hatchling ate again, its tiny claws batting at the food hungrily. Garrick watched, fascinated and fearful at the same time. Hours passed. He cleaned the small space, careful not to make too much noise. The hatchling began to relax slightly, its breathing evening out. Garrick found himself talking to it quietly. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you while I'm here." As night fell on the station, the hum of machinery filled the air. Garrick felt exhausted, yet he could not sleep. Something about this hatchling, something about the way it had appeared, hungry and alone, made him uneasy. Not because it was dangerous, but because he sensed that this small act of kindness had triggered something far bigger than he could imagine. Suddenly, the hatchling let out a small roar. Not loud, not frightening, but enough to make Garrick jump. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, reflecting intelligence and expectation. Garrick stared at it. "What are you?" he whispered. The hatchling chirped again, nuzzling his hand as if it knew he would protect it. Then, almost immediately, a shadow passed over the window of the quarters. Garrick's heart leapt into his throat. He rushed to the window. Nothing, just the dark expanse of the city outside, lights blinking far below, distant ships moving like fireflies in the void. He shook his head. "I'm imagining things," he muttered. But the feeling didn't leave him. Something somewhere knew about this hatchling. Something powerful. Something dangerous. Sleep did not come easily. Garrick lay awake, listening to the soft breathing of the hatchling curled near his feet. Every creak of the station, every whisper of the wind through the external vents, made him tense. He knew this night was only the beginning. Something had been set in motion the moment he decided to help the small, starving creature. And somewhere, far beyond the station, the first signs of movement began. Wings stretching, muscles coiling, eyes opening to the dark vastness of space. The Dragon Emperor had sensed it. He was coming, and Garrick had no idea that the next day, his life would change forever. The morning light of Station Ardent crept through the small window of Garrick's quarters, though it barely reached the corners where shadows lingered. The hatchling stirred, lifting its tiny head, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Its wings twitched nervously, as if testing the strength that wasn't fully there yet. Garrick watched, feeling a mixture of awe and responsibility. He knelt beside it and held out a piece of bread. The hatchling sniffed cautiously, then nibbled. Its small teeth bit gently, delicate yet hungry. Garrick smiled softly. "That's right, eat. You need your strength." The hatchling paused, looking at him with what seemed almost like gratitude. Garrick shook his head. "You understand me too much, little one," he murmured. He wished he could speak the language of dragons, hear its thoughts directly, but for now, he had to rely on patience and care. Minutes later, Garrick began to notice something strange. The hatchling's scales, dull and dusty yesterday, now glimmered faintly in the sunlight. Small sparks of color danced along its tiny spine, almost like firelight trapped beneath its skin. He froze. Was it responding to him, or to the food? Before he could ponder further, a loud crash echoed from the station corridor. Garrick's heart leapt. He clutched the hatchling close, feeling its tiny body shiver against his chest. He peeked through the window of his door. No one was there, only a maintenance drone toppled onto its side, flickering lights along the hall. He exhaled slowly. Maybe it was just the wind from the ventilation shafts. But his instincts told him otherwise. Something was watching, something beyond the ordinary. He decided it was time to feed the hatchling more properly. Garrick rummaged through his quarters, finding dried meat, water, and a few energy rations meant for emergencies. The hatchling's eyes lit up at the sight of food, and for a moment, Garrick felt a warmth in his chest. He wasn't just a janitor. Right now, he was the only thing standing between this small, fragile creature and the dangers of the station outside. He set the food down and stepped back. The hatchling approached cautiously, sniffing each piece before devouring it in tiny, careful bites. Garrick watched it, fascinated by its intelligence. This was no ordinary animal. It understood hunger, danger, and trust. It was already forming a bond with him, and Garrick realized something that made him uneasy. This bond could be dangerous, too. As the hatchling ate, Garrick cleaned the small quarters. He moved quickly but quietly, wiping surfaces, rearranging supplies, making sure the space was secure. He glanced at the hatchling. Its wings stretched slightly, tiny claws flexing, small sparks of firelight flickering in its mouth as if it were tasting the air itself. The hatchling suddenly hissed, a soft, warning sound. Garrick froze. Shadows moved outside the window. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then a faint vibration ran through the floor. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Garrick felt it. The hatchling's eyes widened, glowing brighter. The small body trembled. Garrick felt a surge of panic. Something or someone was aware of this creature. Something powerful. He didn't know if it was an enemy or a watcher, but the presence was undeniable. He scooped the hatchling into his arms again. "We have to stay hidden," he whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." Hours passed. Garrick fed the hatchling multiple times, carefully rationing what little food he had. He tried to keep it calm, speaking softly, moving slowly. But every now and then, the hatchling would pause, ears flicking, eyes scanning the room. Garrick followed its gaze but saw nothing. He was beginning to feel a tension he could not shake, a feeling that they were being observed by something far beyond the station walls. As evening approached, Garrick realized he had to do more. The hatchling needed water, warmth, and a place to rest comfortably. He built a small nest in the corner of the room using blankets and spare clothing. The hatchling crawled inside immediately, curling up as if it had known this place all its life. Garrick watched it, amazed by how quickly it adapted, how it instinctively sought safety. But the calm didn't last. A deep rumble shook the quarters, faint at first, then growing stronger. Garrick gripped the hatchling tightly. It hissed, small sparks of fire igniting briefly along its scales. Something huge was moving outside, and the station itself seemed to respond to it, lights flickering and alarms murmuring softly in the distance. Garrick whispered, "Stay calm. We can't let anyone find us." The hatchling leaned into his chest, trembling but not making a sound. Together, they waited, listening as the rumble passed through the station. Garrick had no idea what was coming, only that it would change everything. Later that night, he tried to sleep, but his mind was restless. He kept imagining massive wings slicing through space, eyes glowing in the dark, a presence so strong that it made the walls themselves feel alive. He feared the Dragon Emperor had sensed the hatchling. The thought made his stomach twist. If such a being existed, what would it want? Punishment? Reward? Or something else entirely? The hatchling shifted in its nest, making small chirping noises. Garrick leaned down. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'll protect you, no matter what happens." He stroked its tiny head, feeling the warmth of life against his hand, the soft vibration of its breathing, the faint sparks along its spine. Minutes stretched into hours. The station hummed around them, a mix of machines, distant voices, and the quiet stirrings of something ancient and powerful. Garrick knew sleep would not come easily. Every sound, every shadow could be a threat. Yet, he couldn't bring himself to regret his choice. The hatchling's life had become his responsibility, and he would face whatever came next. In the darkness, a faint glimmer appeared outside the small window. Garrick froze. It was subtle, a shimmer of light that seemed almost alive, moving against the city's skyline. The hatchling hissed, glowing faintly. Garrick realized the presence was drawing nearer. Something was approaching. He swallowed hard. "We have to be ready," he whispered. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The night passed slowly, each minute heavy with tension. Garrick watched the hatchling sleep, small sparks of light dancing along its scales, and felt a strange mix of fear and hope. He didn't know what the Dragon Emperor wanted, but he knew this was only the beginning. The bond he had formed with the hatchling would be tested soon, in ways he could not yet imagine. And somewhere, beyond the station, something stirred. Something immense, intelligent, and aware. The Dragon Emperor was moving, drawn by the presence of the hatchling, by the kindness of a lowly janitor who had dared to feed a starving creature. By the first light of dawn, Garrick knew with certainty their lives would never be the same again. The station, the city, even the universe beyond. It all held a new tension now, a suspense that whispered of fire, power, and the arrival of something far greater than anyone had seen before. The morning sun barely reached the far corridors of Station Ardent, yet the city outside buzzed with activity. Garrick moved quietly through the empty halls, carrying his mop and bucket as he always did. But today, every creak of metal, every flicker of light, set his nerves on edge. He was no longer alone in his small quarters. The hatchling had grown more alert overnight. Its tiny claws clicked softly on the floor as it followed him, tail flicking nervously. He had to be careful. One wrong move and someone could discover the dragon. Station Ardent was a fortress of rules, machines, and eyes everywhere. Security drones roamed the hallways, programmed to report unusual activity, and human officers monitored every sector. If anyone saw a dragon hatchling, even a small one, chaos would follow. Garrick tried to keep the creature hidden in the folds of his coat as he worked. He moved swiftly, cleaning the corridors, making sure no mess betrayed the presence of the hatchling. But the hatchling was restless. It chirped softly, sensing danger in the air. And danger was real. From the corner of his eye, Garrick noticed a shadow slipping along the wall, a movement too smooth and deliberate for a stray drone. He froze. The hatchling stiffened in his arms, wings twitching. Someone was watching them. Garrick ducked into a side corridor, holding the hatchling close. His heart pounded. He didn't know if this watcher was human, machine, or something else entirely. For the first time, he felt the weight of his decision. Feeding the hatchling had been an act of kindness. Now, that kindness put them both at risk. He reached his quarters and carefully set the hatchling down. It crawled into its nest, but its eyes never left the door. Garrick scanned the room, looking for anything that could protect them. He had no weapons, no security clearance, nothing but his wits and courage. And yet, a strange resolve settled in his chest. He would not let anyone harm this creature. The day passed with tense moments. Garrick went about his cleaning duties, but every noise made him flinch. A dropped tray, a hiss from the ventilation system, even the soft footsteps of a passing officer. Each one was a threat. The hatchling followed him cautiously, occasionally letting out a warning chirp when it sensed a presence Garrick could not detect. Around midday, the first real danger arrived. A maintenance drone, its sensors malfunctioning or perhaps alerted by the hatchling's presence, swept into his corridor. Its lights scanned rapidly, the mechanical hum growing louder. Garrick froze, his heart in his throat. The hatchling hissed, tiny sparks flickering from its mouth. Garrick held it tightly, moving slowly to the side. The drone paused, its sensors flicking erratically. Garrick realized it was detecting something unusual, something alive that was not human. "Come on," he whispered. "Stay calm." He led the drone toward a maintenance hatch, hoping to hide the hatchling beneath a pile of tools. The machine whirred closer, lights scanning every corner. Garrick's hands shook. He felt the hatchling trembling in his grip, tiny claws digging into his palm. Suddenly, the drone's lights faltered. The hatchling let out a small roar, more forceful than before, and sparks danced along its tiny body. Garrick could feel the heat of it, the surge of energy. The drone's sensors overloaded for a moment, lights flickering wildly before it retreated down the corridor, its mechanical limbs whirring. Garrick exhaled, relief washing over him. "Good job," he murmured to the hatchling, who chirped softly, nestling back into his arms. But the moment of relief was brief. Something far more dangerous was coming. Later that afternoon, Garrick noticed unusual activity on the station monitors. Communications were disrupted intermittently, strange signals blinking across the screens. He didn't understand the technical details, but he knew these were signs of something big, something not random. The hatchling reacted first. Its eyes glowed brighter, wings twitching, and a low, vibrating hum filled the room. Garrick realized with a chill that this creature could sense forces far beyond human perception. It was alerting him, warning him that something was approaching. He peered out the window. The cityscape of Station Ardent stretched endlessly, towers and docking bays bathed in the dim light of distant stars. And yet, beyond the city, shadows moved in the void, massive shapes gliding silently through space, too vast to be ordinary ships. Garrick's mind raced. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." The hatchling hissed again, small sparks igniting briefly along its spine. Pressed close to Garrick, instinctively seeking protection. He stroked its head, whispering, "I won't let them hurt you, I promise." But even as he spoke, the station trembled. Not violently, but subtly, as if some unseen presence was shifting its weight, observing, calculating. Garrick's blood ran cold. Whoever or whatever was out there was powerful, and it knew about them. By evening, the tension escalated. Officers began to patrol more aggressively, security drones buzzing with unusual frequency. Garrick's simple routines were impossible to maintain without drawing attention. He hid the hatchling beneath blankets, creating makeshift barriers, trying to mask its presence. But danger came from another side as well. Rumors spread among the station workers. Strange sightings of a glowing creature, rumors of sparks of fire in empty corridors. Whispers of dragons, long thought extinct, began circulating. Garrick realized it was only a matter of time before someone discovered them. The hatchling, sensing his anxiety, chirped softly. Its eyes glowed faintly, as if trying to reassure him. Garrick shook his head. "Don't worry," he said, though he knew that worry was useless. "We have to survive until morning. We just have to survive." Night fell, and Garrick finally allowed himself a moment of quiet. The hatchling curled in his arms, tiny warmth against his chest. But even in that brief peace, the air thrummed with anticipation. The station itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, someone, to arrive. Garrick couldn't sleep. He stayed awake, listening to every sound. The hum of energy cores, the creak of metal, the distant chatter of the city. And somewhere in the darkness, he felt it again. The same deep, vibrating presence from before. Stronger now, closer. He didn't know its intentions, only that it was coming. He held the hatchling tightly, whispering, "Whatever comes, we face it together. You and I." Outside, in the void of space, massive wings unfurled. A figure, immense and terrifying, began to move toward Station Ardent. It was no ordinary dragon, no simple creature of legend. It was a being of authority, of power, and it had been alerted to the hatchling's presence. The Dragon Emperor was coming, and Garrick knew, with a certainty that made his stomach twist, that the day of danger had only just begun. The days passed like a blur for Garrick. The hatchling, once small and fragile, was growing faster than he had imagined. Its wings, though still weak, stretched wider each day, and its scales shimmered with colors that shifted subtly in the dim light of his quarters. Every movement it made seemed more deliberate, more aware. Garrick couldn't help but stare, a mixture of awe and worry twisting in his chest. He had never cared for anything so completely. Cleaning the station had been simple work, predictable and quiet, but this small dragon had changed everything. Its presence filled the room with life, its energy vibrating softly, almost like it had its own heartbeat separate from his own. "Easy now," he whispered one morning as the hatchling stretched and let out a tiny, fiery chirp. Its mouth flickered with sparks as if tasting the air, testing its powers. Garrick's eyes widened. It was learning fast, faster than he could anticipate. And the faster it grew, the more dangerous it became. The station, once a place of mundane routines and quiet corridors, now seemed alive with threats. Garrick had noticed small disturbances. Unexplained power fluctuations, shadows that moved too quickly to be human, and distant sounds that no machine should have been capable of producing. The hatchling sensed them first, ears flicking, eyes glowing faintly. He had begun to trust its instincts. They were sharper than any sensors, more reliable than any warning alarm. By midweek, the hatchling could walk and hop with surprising agility. It played with scraps of cloth and leftover tools, batting them around with tiny claws that were already sharp. Its eyes followed Garrick constantly, filled with a curious intelligence that seemed almost human. It learned quickly, imitating his gestures and sounds, understanding commands he had not even tried to teach. One afternoon, Garrick noticed a faint shimmer along its scales. A spark of fire flickered unexpectedly from its mouth, a small puff of flame that left scorch marks on the floor. He froze. "Careful," he whispered, gently pressing the hatchling down. Its eyes met his, wide and apologetic, yet not afraid. It was learning too fast. The station's hum of activity outside his quarters intensified. Garrick heard footsteps and the distant roar of engines, the chatter of officers in the corridors. Rumors of dragons were spreading quietly, whispered in fear and disbelief. He didn't know how long he could hide the hatchling. Each day brought new risks. He decided to explore ways to protect it further. He dug through old storage rooms, finding scraps of metal and cloth to create a makeshift pen, a place where the hatchling could stay hidden while he worked. It was small, cramped, and far from ideal, but it gave him some peace of mind. The hatchling seemed to understand. It moved into the pen without protest, curling up among the blankets and metal scraps. Yet, it remained alert, ears twitching, eyes scanning the room as if sensing invisible forces. Garrick wondered if it was the Emperor already. He didn't have long to wonder. That evening, as he cleaned the hallways outside his quarters, the hatchling chirped sharply. Garrick froze. Something had changed in the air. A deep vibration thrummed through the station, stronger than before. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. It pulsed through the floors, the walls, the very air. The hatchling pressed against him, small sparks flickering along its spine. "They're coming?" Garrick whispered, a chill running down his back. "I don't know who, but they're coming." He hurried back to the hatchling, carrying it close. Its warmth radiated against his chest, a tiny anchor of life and energy. Yet the fear in its eyes was unmistakable. The presence approaching was vast, powerful, and intelligent. He spent the night reinforcing the pen, arranging blankets, and covering the room's entrances as best as he could. The hatchling slept uneasily, its body twitching occasionally, wings fluttering, sparks lighting up its scales in the dark. Garrick stayed awake, listening to the subtle vibrations, the faint whispers of the station settling around them. By morning, the hatchling's growth was undeniable. It had nearly doubled in size, its wings strong enough to flap lightly, creating soft gusts of air that stirred the blankets around it. Its eyes gleamed with intelligence, curiosity, and something deeper, a sense of power that Garrick could feel pressing against his own heart. He fed it carefully, rationing the food to ensure it remained healthy. Every bite, every moment of care, strengthened the bond between them. Garrick realized he wasn't just protecting a creature. He was shaping its trust, its understanding, and perhaps even its destiny. But the danger outside continued to grow. Security drones buzzed more frequently, and whispers of sightings became louder. Garrick noticed officers pausing in hallways, scanning the shadows with suspicion. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone noticed the hatchling. The hatchling's instincts had already sensed it. It hissed softly whenever a shadow passed near the quarters or when a faint vibration ran through the walls. Garrick marveled at its awareness, realizing it could detect threats far better than any human or machine. Then came the first direct sign. A low, rumbling vibration shook the station just as Garrick was feeding the hatchling. The walls trembled slightly, lights flickered, and the air seemed heavier. The hatchling arched its back, sparks flickering along its body, eyes wide and alert. Garrick's stomach twisted. This was no ordinary threat. This was the presence of something immense, something approaching. He held the hatchling close. "Stay calm," he whispered, though his own voice trembled. "We face it together." From outside, a shadow moved across the sky of the station, far beyond any human craft. It was vast, stretching across the cityscape, wings glinting faintly in the light of distant stars. Garrick felt the pulse of its power, the awareness of a being that could crush the station effortlessly if it chose. The hatchling chirped, a sound Garrick had come to understand as warning and reassurance at the same time. It knew the Dragon Emperor was near. Garrick's heart raced. He had fed this creature, cared for it, and now the Emperor's attention was drawn directly to them. Hours passed, the tension in the station building like a coiled spring. Garrick moved quietly, performing his cleaning duties while keeping one eye on the hatchling. He had learned its cues. A flick of the tail, a shift in its posture, the glow in its eyes. Each signal told him more than any monitor or alarm could. Night fell, and the hatchling's energy continued to grow. Small sparks flickered along its body, wings fluttering, claws tapping against the floor. Garrick stayed close, whispering encouragement, stroking its head, and marveling at the creature's intelligence. It was more than a dragon. It was a partner, a being that had chosen to trust him. And the Emperor was closer now than ever. Garrick could feel it in the air, a presence so strong that even the thick walls of the station could not block it. He tightened his grip on the hatchling. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Because this small act of kindness, feeding a starving dragon hatchling, had set events in motion that neither Garrick nor the station could control. And the Dragon Emperor was coming. The first light of dawn barely pierced the corridors of Station Ardent, but Garrick could feel the tension in the air like a living thing. The hatchling, now larger and more alert than ever, crouched beside him, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Its wings twitched nervously, tail flicking with agitation. Garrick held it close, trying to calm his own nerves, though he knew deep down that nothing could prepare him for what was coming. The vibrations in the station had grown stronger overnight. Low, deep pulses that seemed to move through the walls and floors, signaling a presence far larger than anything human had encountered. Garrick had tried to ignore them, telling himself it was just machinery or a malfunctioning system. But the hatchling's behavior left no doubt. Something immense, intelligent, and unstoppable was approaching. And then he heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. A soft, rhythmic thrum that resonated through the station like the beating of a giant heart. The hatchling stiffened, wings spreading slightly as sparks flickered along its spine. Its eyes met Garrick's, wide with recognition and fear. "They're here," he whispered. "It's time." He stepped carefully toward the window, holding the hatchling close. Beyond the cityscape of Station Ardent, massive shapes moved through the void of space. The first of them emerged fully into view, a dragon unlike any creature Garrick had ever imagined. Its scales shimmered with metallic hues, wings stretching far wider than any human craft, eyes glowing with a cold, intelligent light. Every movement radiated power and authority. The Dragon Emperor had arrived. Garrick's heart pounded. The hatchling chirped softly, curling closer to him. He realized that in all his years, he had never faced anything like this. Machines, officers, even rumors of aliens. None of it prepared him for the sheer presence of a being that seemed to embody the weight of centuries. The Dragon Emperor's gaze swept over the station, scanning, calculating. Garrick felt it on him, on the hatchling, a pressure that made his chest tight. It was aware. It knew everything. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his shaking hands. We didn't mean any harm," he whispered to the hatchling, unsure if it could hear him. The hatchling chirped back softly, sparks flickering along its tiny spine. Together, they stood, waiting for what seemed inevitable. Then, the Emperor moved closer, descending through the station's outer corridors with a grace that was terrifying. Its massive claws barely made a sound, wings folding and unfolding with precision. Garrick pressed the hatchling tighter to his chest, instincts screaming at him to run, hide, do anything to survive. But he didn't move. Something about the Emperor's presence demanded respect, attention, and careful caution. Garrick realized that running might provoke more danger than staying. He had to show courage. He had to show understanding. The Emperor stopped just outside his quarters. Garrick could see its eyes through the glass panels of the door, glowing with intensity. The hatchling shivered in his arms, tiny sparks lighting up the room. Garrick spoke softly, voice barely above a whisper. "We only wanted to help. That's all." For a long moment, nothing happened. The station held its breath. Garrick could feel the weight of the Emperor's intelligence pressing against him, judging, sensing, analyzing. And then, slowly, the Emperor's massive head lowered, bringing its eyes level with the hatchling. A sound resonated through the room. Not a roar, not a growl, but a deep, vibrating hum that Garrick felt in his chest. The hatchling chirped back, smaller sparks igniting along its body, responding to the Emperor in some silent, powerful language that Garrick could not understand. The Emperor's gaze shifted from the hatchling to Garrick. He held the creature closer, standing tall despite the fear curling in his stomach. There was no anger in the Emperor's eyes, only curiosity. It studied him, measured him, weighing his actions against some standard Garrick could not see. Minutes stretched, each second thick with tension. Garrick realized that his fate and the hatchling's hung in the balance. One wrong move, one misstep, and the Emperor could destroy everything. But the creature's presence also carried a strange weight of potential reward. Then, slowly, the Emperor moved its massive wings, creating a gust of air that fluttered the blankets and papers in the room. The hatchling chirped loudly, sparking brightly, and Garrick felt a pulse of warmth and acknowledgement. It was judging them, not punishing them. A slow rumble vibrated through the Emperor's body, and Garrick instinctively understood. The Emperor recognized his kindness. The simple act of feeding the hatchling, caring for it when no one else would, had not gone unnoticed. Something in the creature's vast, ancient mind had registered his choices. Garrick's chest tightened with relief, though he did not dare relax fully. He knew that trust was fragile, that the Emperor could still act unpredictably. But for now, there was no immediate danger. Instead, a silent understanding passed between them, unspoken yet undeniable. He looked down at the hatchling, which had begun to respond to the Emperor in its own small, delicate way. Sparks danced along its body, tiny flames curling from its mouth. The Emperor watched, eyes gleaming, wings folding slightly as if acknowledging the bond between human and hatchling. Garrick whispered softly, "We did it. We're safe for now." The Emperor tilted its massive head, studying Garrick once more. Then, with a powerful flap of its wings, it lifted from the floor, its massive body casting shadows across the room. The vibration of its movement resonated through the walls, a reminder of the power it held. Without a sound, it glided back toward the outer corridors, wings folding gracefully, leaving a lingering sense of awe and tension in its wake. Garrick exhaled, holding the hatchling tightly, marveling at what had just occurred. The station seemed to settle around him, the hum of machinery returning to normal, the distant chatter resuming, but Garrick knew that nothing would ever be the same. He had faced the Dragon Emperor, survived the encounter, and proved his kindness mattered, even to a creature of unimaginable power. He looked down at the hatchling, which had nestled close to him, small sparks flickering along its spine as if showing its own acknowledgement. Garrick smiled, a mixture of pride, relief, and wonder washing over him. For the first time, he understood the truth of what he had done. One simple act of kindness had reached across species, across power, and across ancient boundaries. The world, or at least the station, would never forget it. And somewhere, beyond the walls of Station Ardent, the Dragon Emperor had taken note. A new bond had been forged, one that would shape the future in ways Garrick could not yet imagine. He whispered softly to the hatchling, "We did it together. Whatever comes next, we face it. Always." For the first time since the hatchling had appeared, Garrick allowed himself a small moment of hope. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The Dragon Emperor's arrival had changed everything. The station, the city, the vast reaches of space beyond. It all held new possibilities, new dangers, and new challenges. And he would face them all side by side with the hatchling, no matter what. The corridors of Station Ardent were quiet now, but Garrick could still feel the echo of the Dragon Emperor's presence lingering in the air. The hum of the station's engines sounded ordinary again, yet he knew that nothing would ever be the same. The hatchling, now resting in its corner nest, flickered faint sparks along its scales, small gestures that mirrored Garrick's own cautious relief. He moved closer, kneeling beside it. "We made it," he whispered softly. The hatchling chirped back, nudging him gently with its small snout, its eyes gleaming with intelligence. It had survived the most dangerous moment of its life, and Garrick had survived alongside it. But he knew better than to assume the danger was over. The Dragon Emperor had left only temporarily. Its presence was a reminder of the power and intelligence watching them, waiting. Garrick carefully gathered some remaining rations and supplies, making sure the hatchling had enough to continue growing. He marveled at how fast it had changed. Each day brought new strength, sharper claws, and brighter sparks of fire from its mouth. Yet it retained the trust he had earned through kindness. That trust, he realized, was more valuable than anything else in the station. As he worked, a soft vibration shook the floor. Garrick froze, heart hammering. Was the Emperor returning? He glanced at the hatchling. Its eyes glowed faintly, alert but calm. The tiny creature had grown in more ways than one. Its instincts had sharpened. Its courage matched Garrick's own. Then came a sound unlike any he had heard before. Not a roar, not a hum, but a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to speak directly to him and the hatchling. The room filled with light as a massive shadow stretched across the wall. Garrick's breath caught in his throat. The Dragon Emperor had returned. It moved with deliberate grace, wings folding and unfolding as it approached. Its eyes, deep and knowing, studied Garrick first, then the hatchling. Garrick held the small creature close, standing tall despite the fear coursing through him. This was the moment of truth, judgment, reward, or punishment. For several long moments, the Emperor said nothing. Garrick felt the immense weight of its intelligence, the power it could unleash with a single thought. Yet the Emperor did not strike. It lowered its massive head, eyes locking onto Garrick's. There was a pulse in the air, subtle but unmistakable, and Garrick understood. It was acknowledgement. "You cared," Garrick whispered, uncertain if the Emperor could hear him in the language of humans. The hatchling chirped softly, responding to the silent communication. Sparks of fire danced along its spine, tiny bursts of energy that mirrored the Emperor's presence. Then, with a powerful motion of its wings, the Emperor shifted its gaze entirely to the hatchling. It hovered over the creature, scanning every detail, every spark of fire, every movement. The hatchling responded instinctively, tilting its head, letting out soft chirps, and igniting small bursts of flame from its mouth. Garrick watched, awestruck, realizing that this silent exchange held more meaning than words ever could. Finally, the Emperor lowered its head fully, letting out a low rumble that vibrated through the floor and walls. Garrick could feel it, a sensation that was equal parts warning and praise. The Emperor recognized his kindness, the careful protection he had provided to a creature that could have been lost or destroyed. A moment later, the Emperor withdrew slightly, wings folding gracefully. It hovered near the door, then flapped powerfully, lifting into the corridors and moving toward the outer parts of the station. Garrick exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. The Emperor had not only spared him and the hatchling, it had acknowledged them. The hatchling chirped happily, sparks dancing along its scales, and crawled into Garrick's arms. He smiled, a mixture of pride and amazement. "We did it," he said softly. "Together." Over the following days, the station returned to its routine, but Garrick's life had changed forever. Officers and drones moved past him as usual, unaware of the extraordinary event that had taken place. Yet he carried the memory of the Dragon Emperor's visit, the weight of its acknowledgement, and the responsibility of caring for a creature of immense potential. He spent hours observing the hatchling, noting its growth and behavior. Each day, it became stronger, more intelligent, and more aware of the world around it. It learned to flap its wings with more power, to ignite sparks of fire deliberately, and even to respond to Garrick's simple commands. Together, they explored the limits of its abilities, building trust and understanding that went beyond species, beyond language. Garrick realized something profound. One act of kindness, feeding a starving dragon hatchling, had not only saved a life, but had forged a connection that crossed boundaries of power, age, and intelligence. The Dragon Emperor had recognized it, and in that recognition, Garrick found a new sense of purpose. Word of strange happenings in the station spread quietly, but no one suspected the true story. Garrick's bond with the hatchling remained a secret, known only to the two of them and the Emperor somewhere far beyond the station walls. He knew that the hatchling's future was secure, not just because of his care, but because the Emperor had taken notice. One evening, as Garrick and the hatchling sat near the window, watching the stars stretch endlessly beyond the station, he whispered, "The world is bigger than I ever imagined, and now you and we're part of it." The hatchling chirped softly, sparks flickering along its body as if in agreement. He understood that the journey was only beginning. The Emperor's arrival had opened doors to possibilities Garrick had never dreamed of. Perhaps one day, the hatchling would leave the station, soar into the vastness of space, and forge its own path. But for now, it was his responsibility, his companion, and a reminder that even in the smallest acts, great power could be awakened. Garrick felt a quiet pride, the kind that came not from recognition or status, but from doing what was right when no one was watching. The hatchling snuggled closer, warmth and life pressed against his chest. Together they had survived, learned, and grown stronger. And somewhere, beyond the station, the Dragon Emperor watched, a silent guardian acknowledging the bond between human and dragon. Garrick knew that their lives would continue to change, that new challenges and dangers awaited. But he also knew one unshakable truth. Kindness, courage, and trust could bridge even the greatest divides. As the stars twinkled endlessly outside the window, Garrick whispered softly to the hatchling, "Whatever comes next, we face it, together." The tiny creature chirped, sparks flickering, and for the first time, Garrick allowed himself to feel hope, courage, and the certainty that even a lowly janitor could change the course of destiny. The station was quiet again, but Garrick and the hatchling knew. The universe had taken notice, and this was only the beginning of their story. The corridors of Station Ardent were quiet now, yet Garrick could still feel the echo of the Dragon Emperor's presence lingering in the air. Machines hummed softly, lights flickered in their usual rhythm, but he knew the station itself had changed. Something extraordinary had passed through its walls. The hatchling, now fully alert and much larger than when it first appeared, curled up in its small nest. Sparks flickered along its scales, tiny bursts of light that seemed almost alive. Garrick approached it slowly, kneeling beside the creature. "We made it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and relief. The hatchling chirped softly, nudging him gently with its snout, a gesture of trust and gratitude. Days passed, and the station's routine returned to its usual hum. Garrick moved among the hallways, mop and bucket in hand, but he no longer felt like just a janitor. The hatchling had changed him. Every glance at the creature reminded him of the courage, care, and responsibility he had shown. And he knew the Dragon Emperor's attention had left a lasting mark. The hatchling continued to grow at an astonishing rate. Its wings stretched wider, claws sharpened, and sparks of fire ignited more boldly from its mouth. Yet, despite its growing strength, it trusted Garrick completely. Together, they explored the limits of its abilities. The hatchling learned to flap its wings with precision, to control the fire it produced, and even to respond to Garrick's simple commands. One evening, a subtle vibration moved through the station. Garrick froze, heart pounding, but the hatchling remained calm, tail flicking and eyes glowing faintly. The Emperor was near, not threatening, but observing. Garrick realized that their bond, built on kindness and trust, had earned them acknowledgement from a being of immense power. A deep, resonant hum filled the room, vibrating through walls and floors. The hatchling chirped softly in response, sparks flickering brighter along its scales. Garrick felt an overwhelming sense of awe. The Dragon Emperor's presence was not just a warning, it was recognition. The massive dragon hovered near the station's outer corridors, its wings creating gusts that shook the room slightly. Its eyes, vast and intelligent, scanned Garrick and the hatchling. There was no anger, no threat, only understanding. Garrick held the hatchling tighter, whispering, "We did what we could, and it matters." For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Emperor lowered its head, eyes meeting Garrick's in a silent acknowledgement. A rumble passed through the room, felt rather than heard, a sign that the Emperor recognized his courage and compassion. The hatchling chirped in excitement, sparks dancing along its body, reflecting the Emperor's approval. Finally, with a powerful flap of its wings, the Dragon Emperor lifted, gliding gracefully toward the station's exit. Garrick exhaled, relief and pride washing over him. They had survived the Emperor's scrutiny. More than that, they had been recognized for their choices, their care, and their courage. The station returned to normal, but Garrick's life had changed forever. He now understood that even a lowly janitor could make a difference in the universe, that acts of kindness could echo far beyond the walls of a station. The hatchling had grown strong and intelligent, and it had formed a bond with him that no one could break. Days turned into weeks, and Garrick continued caring for the hatchling, teaching it to control its abilities, exploring its limits, and preparing it for the future. The Dragon Emperor's visit had changed their path, and Garrick felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer invisible. He mattered not because of his rank or skill, but because he had chosen to do the right thing. One evening, Garrick sat with the hatchling by the observation window, watching distant stars stretch across the void. He whispered softly, "The universe is bigger than I ever imagined, but now we're part of it." The hatchling chirped, sparks dancing along its scales like a mirror of his own excitement and hope. He realized that their story was just beginning. The Dragon Emperor had taken notice, yes, but their journey had only started. There would be challenges, threats, and mysteries to face. Yet Garrick knew one unshakable truth. Courage, kindness, and trust could bridge even the greatest divides, connecting human and dragon in ways that defied expectation. The hatchling snuggled against him, and Garrick felt its warmth and life pressing against his chest. Together they had survived, learned, and grown stronger. Together, they had earned the acknowledgement of one of the universe's most powerful beings. And somewhere, beyond the station, the Dragon Emperor watched silently, a guardian and witness to a bond forged through compassion. Garrick whispered once more, "Whatever comes next, we face it, together." The hatchling chirped in agreement, sparks flickering brightly. For the first time, Garrick felt true hope, courage, and the certainty that even a single act of kindness could ripple across the cosmos. The station remained quiet, but Garrick and the hatchling knew the universe had taken notice. And this, he realized, was only the beginning of their story.